You are Locked On Ole Miss, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Ole Miss made it rain against the Arkansas Razorback. Jackson Dart broke every record known to man. Jordan Watkins got in the hit parade as well as Ole Miss destroyed the Arkansas Razorbacks, and that is setting up an absolutely massive football game against the Georgia Bulldogs this weekend. It's a game that I'm going to spend this whole week talking about how Ole Miss can win the game, and I am dead serious about that. We're going to bring everybody in and talk about what's going on. This is our reaction roundtable. We have Josh Guest from basically parts unknown in North Mississippi. Derek Vandy Griff is joining us tonight, and Zach Mareth is joining us. He writes for the Rebel Walk as well. And gentlemen, it was kind of nice and kind of cathartic for Ole Miss football to have a game like that, Zach.
Yeah, I mean, it was something we've been waiting on all year, Steven. It seemed like they were clicking on all cylinders, and it seemed like they kind of responded and picked off right where they left off at the end of that Oklahoma game. You know, the last half of that Oklahoma game, the defense was coming together. You know, they finished that game with 10 sacks, and the offense looked great too. You know, they start to get Prescorn and Wright involved, and then directly into that first drive of Ole Miss versus Arkansas, you see Juice Wells start to get some targets, and then Daquan Wright continues to be involved. They don't score on that 4th and 1, which again, we can get into that, but the defense picked them up. And then I thought the offense did a fantastic job proving that this is what they can be. And then you have to remember, they did this without their starting left tackle. They're starting the best wide receiver in the country, Trey Harris. And I think Caden Prescorn maybe played one snap where he was into block in a 3rd and 1 or 4th and 1 package. So really good stuff. And if there's a time to get right, now is the time to do it ahead of Georgia.
Derek, thanks for joining. It's been a couple of weeks, man. I've been keeping an eye on your Ole Miss After Dark stuff. It's been pretty fantastic. But honestly, Ole Miss is kind of getting right at the perfect time. Like, I'm going to spend the next week telling Ole Miss fans that they're going to beat Georgia, and they absolutely can beat this Georgia team. I think if we look at the lines right now, Georgia is only favored by 2.5 points. The over-under has gone down to 54.5. There's no reason to think that Ole Miss cannot win this game. So I'm going to tell everybody that they can win this game. Am I crazy?
No, I actually made the comment earlier today to my brother once this line came out that I think I've already found my money line pick for the show coming up this Wednesday on Ole Miss After Dark if this line ends up holding. I like what Ole Miss is doing right now. Kind of like Zach said, the offense is getting going at the right time. These last 6 quarters, you've really seen the offensive line in particular come together, right? We've given Jackson Dart some time. He looks way more comfortable back there throwing the ball. He's not aiming it. He's not off of his back foot. He's letting that sucker rip right now, and he's on target with everything that he's throwing right now. Daquan Wright, a guy that Zach brought up also, was fantastic for us. Obviously, you know what Jordan Watkins did. I expect Trey Harris to be back possibly. So if you add him into the mix with all of these guys we got going right now with Jordan, you know, Juice made a couple of good plays. There was one that I was a little frustrated about that he didn't go get on that fade to the right sideline there. I felt like there was an extra burst he could have given to get to that ball. He didn't. Outside of that, thought he played pretty well, though. But Daquan Wright is an absolute monster out there. He's so big, and the way he moves at that size is so impressive. But again, this all comes back to the offensive line. They're coming together, getting a little healthier at the right time. So if we can give Jackson a little bit of time back there, let him keep doing what he's doing. He looks incredibly comfortable. And this defense, that's one thing that Georgia struggled with the last couple of weeks is there's been pressure getting to Carson Beck. And when somebody gets pressure on him, you saw against Florida, he had those 3 interceptions there in the first half. That's one thing Ole Miss does really well is get to the quarterback. So that's one thing that works in our favor also this Saturday.
You know, Josh, one thing in this Arkansas game that really has my attention is the fact that Jackson Dart broke the unbreakable, the Ole Miss football equivalent of Cy Young's win record or something like that. It was Archie Manning's single game total offense record that no matter how good of a quarterback that Ole Miss had, you could not break that record. And Jackson Dart not only broke it, he broke it in the 3rd quarter.
Yeah, Stephen, and I mean the the announcers were talking about how Juice Wells was trying to take that role of Trey Harris. I think we wanted to try to make that happen, but Jordan Watkins played that role, and he played it very well. He knocked the top off of the defense time and time. He had 262-yard touchdowns and a 66. I mean, at one point, 3 out of Dart's last 4 passes were touchdowns. The game was absolutely unreal. I saw after the game that this was a record for an SEC points scored in an SEC game for the Ole Miss Rebels in the history of Ole Miss football.
Well, it tied it 79 with against Vanderbilt.
Okay, so tied a record for that. But again, if we go back to those first 4 games, everybody kept saying these opponents aren't any good, but we still did things that no one had done in 20 years. Nobody. And so, then we go and lose to Kentucky, which is unforgivable, I know, and we lose to LSU. And those things they're game plan. It's just what they are. We can't call it anything else. The way that they game plan, the way that they called the game, the way that they did that is why we lost. And it was good to see this happen because all those naysayers who said, oh, you're not really that good. Yes, we are. We just didn't play like it because we didn't game plan the right way. We are this good, and we are good enough to roll and steamroll the rest of the way. Now, will we? Who knows? And I don't ever want anybody to get hurt, ever. But Parrish getting injured may force our hand to use some of these other backs, and it may be a blessing in disguise as far as the offensive production overall is concerned, just like Trey Harris being out forced their hand on spreading that ball around, letting Dart sit back there and do what Dart does.
Yeah, it's interesting to me. And we heard all week about how Ulysses Bentley got moved up to the backup on the depth chart and all of that happened. And then whenever Henry Parrish took that horrible injury, because that was a horrible injury, I don't care what the injury report says, Henry Parrish is not coming back this season. It's not. But the fact that it wasn't Ulysses Bentley that became the featured running back after that, it was Dominic Thomas. And at that point, you just kind of raise back, Zach, and say, okay, this is kind of interesting. What exactly are they thinking right now? And I think what they want to do is like, hey, let's just find somebody that can get 3 or 4 yards and move forward, move the pile forward as opposed to a home run guy. Maybe that's what they're thinking.
Yeah, you figure that has to be the reasoning. And you mentioned it, Steven, but if you watch Dominic Thomas, it looks like he's one of the only Ole Miss running backs that falls forward when he's getting tackled. So if it's a gain of 3, he's going to go that extra mile to get that 4th or 5th yard. He weighs 210 pounds. He's a thicker guy. I think he looked pretty good in pass protection too. So, Josh.
Really good in pass protection.
Again, he's a big dude, man. And Josh said it, but in a way, I think this could be a blessing in disguise because you're playing a Georgia defense that is by far the most physical defense you're going to play and has NFL players at essentially every position. And they blitz and they attack the quarterback like no one Ole Miss has seen yet. So when you have guys like Dominic Thomas who are going to be able to really stick their nose in there and give Dart that extra second, I think that's going to be a huge difference in this game. But I did think, along with the rest of the fan base, I was like, why is Bentley not in the game here? I do think Bentley will start against Georgia, but I wouldn't say I'm going to be surprised if they throw Dominic Thomas out there.
Or if Rashad Amos gets healthy.
Yeah. They could go a bunch of different directions, and they've really been confusing us the entire season. But I will say, without having Parrish, now you have 3 guys who are really big dudes who I think can really go ahead, especially in those short yardage plays. For example, I think Dominic Thomas has a better chance of converting that 4th and 1 on the first drive of the game than Ulysses Bentley.
Yep.
Now, in a way, I was excited to see him play, but it's going to be interesting to see the rotation that they put against Georgia because I think Bentley does deserve, and I think he needs his touches.
All right, we got Brad Logan joining us. Thank you so much for popping in and hanging with us, buddy.
Absolutely. Zach, you were on the call earlier, right?
Yes, sir.
The Zoom call. What's the latest on Henry Parrish Jr.?
Lane said he's out. That's all he's got. So Steven said it earlier, but I wouldn't be surprised.
Imagine that.
One more time.
I wouldn't be surprised if Henry Parrish doesn't play football again this year. That was a horrific looking injury.
Okay, that was my main thing. And Steven and I talked a little bit this afternoon. I'll be honest, I really like Dominique Thomas, and this is coming from somebody that didn't know that Dominique Thomas was on the roster. Tyler Comish, who was with us at Inside the Rebels, did a kind of a feature on him. I guess I missed it over the summer. He's got a really interesting story. I liked his north-south. I think what Steven said, he's kind of a always falls forward type of running back. That's what I really like about him. But I think the interesting part for me is I would love your thoughts on this. I just don't think the staff wants to play Ulysses Bentley. I don't think and I think if you take away the big run against LSU, he averages less than 4 yards a carry in Baton Rouge. So I think that's kind of where the staff is leaning with him. With no Rashad Amos, it looks like it's going to be Dominique Thomas and maybe Matt Jones. I don't know.
Yeah, and with this Georgia game, you don't have to have a superstar running game when you play Georgia, but you do have to have a threat of a running game, because if Georgia knows that Jackson Dart is always going to pass and being that spot for 3 seconds and you have to get to him, Georgia has the athletes to get to him. They have the best football team talent-wise in the entire country. Now, I do think Ole Miss can win this game. If the same team that plays Georgia played Arkansas on Saturday, Ole Miss can win this game. But we're going to turn the page a little bit to that Georgia game in just a second, just as soon as we come back here on the Locked On Ole Miss podcast. Stick around for turning the page to the Georgia Bulldogs right after this. What's up, Ole Miss fans? Our friends over at 5 Hour Energy know that being passionate about football isn't just a hobby, it's a way of life. It takes a lot of energy to power through all-day tailgates, touchdown celebrations, watching Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny to make the offense work, because apparently I am Thanos. That is why they created the Stand the Fan 5 Hour Energy shots with the special flavor called Fan Fuel. It's designed for super fans like us. You know, the ones that are in the Grove, first and last to leave. We see you. You know what gave me my fan fuel this week? It was Jackson Dart and Jordan Watkins just basically playing the slot machine on Arkansas secondary this weekend. And with the big matchup against Georgia just around the corner, the uniform or the shirt combination for the fans is red. You can get that at College Corner. We're going to tell you about that in a second. But 5 Hour Energy knows no matter what team you root for, being a fan takes heart, soul, and a whole lot of energy. Whether you're prepping for the big tailgate or ironing your jersey, that game day to-do list is never short. That is why limited edition Stand the Fan 5 Hour Energy Shot is here to keep you going all season long. So what's your fan fuel this week? Whatever it is, do it with 5 Hour Energy. Get yours at 5hourenergy.com, available and shipped nationwide. Let's go Rebels. Also, a new partner on the Locked On Ole Miss podcast is College Corner. It's your one-stop shop for all things Ole Miss. Game day is just around the corner, and this week the fans are rocking red against the Georgia Bulldogs. So head on over to the College Corner to pick up your perfect game day gear, whether you're gearing up for football, basketball, or baseball. College Corner has you covered. They have a ton of new Realtree merch as well, so check that out. They're located off of Sisk Avenue, right across from the new Chick-fil-A. Getting to the store is a breeze, and they have plenty of parking. And for those of you out of state, no worries. Visit collegecornerstore.com, where they turn around orders lightning fast. Trust me, this just isn't a pitch. College Corner is where I get all of my Rebel gear. So visit collegecornerstore.com or stop by the College Corner in Oxford, Ridgeland, or Flowood today. All right, everyone. This is really interesting what's going on offensively with Ole Miss this season, because against Arkansas, that was the most dynamic passing offense that I've seen a Lane Kiffin unit have in his time at Ole Miss against an SEC team. Daquan Wright, I think, was the key to that. He was the missing piece with Trey Harris being out. So, Zach, do you think Caden Prescorn, when he comes back, we see more 12 personnel? Do you think that is going to be helpful in incorporating Trey Harris against the Georgia Bulldogs?
I think it has to be, Steven. And the thing that's important for me is that when Trey Harris does come back, which I expect him to come back this week, is that we stay away from this one-dimensional offense that we saw really until Trey got hurt. We saw that 12 personnel when Caden was healthy. against Oklahoma, and it looked great. They were spreading the ball around, and then you transition that into Arkansas. Jordan Watkins goes out wide, and he has himself a hell of a game. So maybe it's keeping Watkins out wide and moving Juice Wells in the slot. You have to do something where you're not going back to just throwing Trey Harris the ball on deep routes every single time. And I think it's crucial to keep Caden Prieskorn and Daquan Wright involved, especially in the red zone, because our red zone offense was god awful up until the second half of that Oklahoma game. And it's going to need to be really good against, like we've talked about, probably the most talented defense in the country in Georgia.
Yeah, it's the most talented team in the entire country. Yeah. And this is a benefit, Dids. This is something that I'm excited about that nobody else is that's watching this video. Whenever I say this, I guarantee you half of the audience is going to roll their eyes. But Ole Miss repeated their uniform from South Carolina at Arkansas successfully, which means for the Georgia game, the powder blue helmets, the red jerseys, and the gray pants is back on the table, folks. You're muted, Dids.
I said, yeah, give me every bit of that. That is an awesome look for us, man. I do love that uniform combination. And, yeah, I was kind of surprised to see us repeat uniforms. It's kind of been our thing the last couple of years, different uniforms every single game. But, kind of piggybacking off the 12 personnel thing, I think we need to do more of that even when Trey does come back. I feel like it'll help us in the running game too, right? If for as good as our pass pro has been the last couple games, we've really struggled moving people up front in the run game. Get your two big tight ends out there. Maybe that can help create some holes for whoever ends up running the ball. Dominic Thomas, Bentley, Amos when he's healthy, whatever's going on with Logan Diggs when he comes back from his knee injury, if he does come back, whoever it is back there. But I do like the idea of continuing to run the 12 personnel even when Trey Harris is back.
It's like one of those things that I'm not a doctor, but I play one on TV. It's like I'm not an offensive coordinator, but I'll sure talk about blocking. Ole Miss does a lot of zone blocking schemes, which if you think about what zone blocking was, I sat in a 10-day seminar, honestly, with Alex Gibbs, who basically invented zone blocking with Terrell Davis back in the Denver Broncos times, back in the mid-2000s. Ole Miss is kind of straight up blocking. You don't get the side to side movement that is known in a zone blocking scheme. So Ole Miss doesn't move people for whatever reason because I think they're not moving. And Ole Miss has a offensive line that they're proud of being rather large individuals. They're proud of that fact. I think because of that, maybe you're not moving side to side in the zone system the way that you would in those TD days with Mark Schlereth and those guys, but they're still running zone type play, so it can end up stagnant. I'm curious to see if against Georgia, you get to see a little bit more gap scheme type stuff, some pin and pull, if that happens, just to create some movement on the offensive line, especially against a team that you might not expect. Now, Brad, with me getting all crazy off in the weeds, what is your thought on the offensive line and what do they need to do against that defensive line? Because we saw against Texas, if you allow Georgia to do it, they will absolutely wreck your day defensively.
Well, I'm all about here's what we know versus here's what we don't know. What we do know is that Caleb Warren is available to play. Now, Jeremy James did play more than anyone else that's been injured. But Caleb Warren just hasn't played, and it hasn't been because of injury. It's been because of the decision process by either John Garrison or Lane Kiffin or Charlie Weiss. So that's what we know. Jerquan Scott has played a little bit. Diego Pounds has played some. It feels like against Arkansas, they found something. Now, what that actually is, I don't know. I think that remains to be seen. But what this team did is they pass pro'd as well as they pass blocked all year. Now, did that have anything to do with Arkansas's defensive front not being as great as T. Will would like? I think that's probably some truth to that. But I do think they actually played together as a group more than they have in quite a while. I think one thing I want to go back to what Zach said is the red zone offense has been so bad. And up until the Arkansas game, it was very poor. And then the first drive of the game, Ole Miss, Lane was trying to call a timeout. And he didn't, and they ran that terrible 4th-and-1 play on the goal line that everybody
three games in a row
outside of the stadium knew what they were running.
Yeah.
Of course, they stop it, and the red zone woes continue. And then everyone in the press box was like, well, here we go again. It's one of those games again. And credit Lane Kiffin. He schemed them up. And you remember they had the pop pass to Daquan Wright on the goal line. They had the out route the slant to one of the many touchdowns by Jordan Watkins. The whole point I'm trying to make, it really feels like, with the exception of the one snap by Reese McIntyre, he's really come around at center. I think the two guys that anchor from Washington, Buello and Kalepo. Now, Buello's had some issues, but Kalepo's been pretty good. Pounds has had his issues, but I thought he played pretty well Saturday. I really think you want to be playing your best football at this point in the season. If you're going to have a loss, I think it's better that you have that loss earlier in the year. It allows you to kind of come back up towards the top of the college football playoff. And I do believe that having Lane Kiffin as your head coach is going to give Ole Miss an extra arrow in his cover, or whatever that is, to really throw out to the college football playoff committee, because he is literally chumming the water for ratings for television. I do think that helps Ole Miss. And I think by having that good offensive front, as much as they've struggled running the football, I do believe if they had run Dominique Thomas more, by what I saw Saturday against Arkansas, they probably would have had a better running game. For whatever reason, when Ulysses Bentley hits the hole, he dances. He does not get north and south. And I think in large part, I think he's missing holes doing that. So I think that's one reason he has been playing. I'm sure there are more reasons, but that's kind of the main reason that I saw.
He does a little bit of that Le'Veon Bell slow glide into the hole. And I don't. Go ahead.
Kevin Smith he wants him to be direct, to hit the hole hard, and I think that's one reason that Matt Jones played so much before he got injured, because he was so demonstrative in finding the hole as best he could and hitting it. So I think from an offensive line standpoint, they've had their struggles, but I think they're playing as good as they've played all year. And if they allow Jackson Dart to get through a couple of progressions, he will not have the opportunity this week as he did last week. But if he can get to that second and third progression, he's tough to beat. And he's playing at a level now that we've not seen him play this year. And so it's been fun to watch, specifically this past Saturday. But, yeah, to your original question, I like where the offensive line is. They're as good as they have been. I don't know how good they are, but they're playing as good as they have all year.
Yeah, Ole Miss is in as good of a spot right now as they could hope to be in, and that includes no matter what would have happened against Kentucky or LSU, Ole Miss right now is in a really good spot. When we come back, we put our finishing touches on this broadcast, talk more about the Georgia Bulldogs, so stick around. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel. It's America's #1 sports book, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. Ole Miss is currently a 2.5-point underdog to the Georgia Bulldogs. Seriously, just 2.5 points in a line that I really expect to move in the next couple of days because of what happened. That's kind of my hunch. And there's so many Georgia fans. I'm expecting this line to move in Georgia's favor over the course of this week to maybe be 4 or 5 points. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game like that, you can check out the latest stats, view the latest play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bet. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch, and make every moment more with FanDuel. It's an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, everybody. Let's wrap this up. We got about 5 more minutes, Zach. Now, let's get your temperature reading on the Georgia game. Just give me about 30 seconds on who you think is going to win and why you think they're going to win.
I'm gonna go against what reporters should do, and I'm gonna use my heart for this one, Steven. I'm taking Ole Miss here. I think the story of the game is going to come down to the trenches and making Carson Beck uncomfortable, and I think this pass rush is up to par to do so. I think you have to look at the last time Ole Miss played a really good offensive line was against LSU. Did they get a sack? No, but they got decent pressure, and they were missing their best pass rusher, Princely Umanmielen. So with the addition of Princely and a defense that seems to be really clicking and getting pressure at will, I think they're going to force Carson Beck to throw even more interceptions, which he typically does on a regular basis. And I think Ole Miss in their offense is going to capitalize on those and take the win in Vaught Hemingway.
All right, Derek, what do you think is going to happen in this ball game?
Yeah, I've kind of shifted there for the last few weeks. I thought Georgia was going to win this game, but I really like what Ole Miss has been doing here the last couple of weeks. Seems they've really gotten things going. I think Ole Miss wins the game, kind of like Zach said. Get pressure on Carson Beck, make him make mistakes, and Ole Miss needs to play to their defense. That was one thing you said a couple weeks ago, Steven, right? This is a defense that can win games for you if you lean on them. And I think that's really important. I think if we coach to that side of the ball, let the defense win it for us, we have a real shot. So I'll take the Rebels by 6 points here on Saturday.
What do you got, Josh?
Steven, I want to circle back real quick. On the Dominic Thomas getting some more playing time than Bentley. I thought maybe my thought was not that he usurped him in the depth chart, but that the game was already out of hand. And that's why he got the play. I did like his pass protection. He was incredible. And also, you mentioned Terrell Davis. I have 3 NFL jerseys in my closet. They're all Broncos. One's Elway, one's Davis. So I think the Ole Miss Rebels are going to win. I do think it's on that defensive line strength. And also, have you seen what Brock Bowers and Ladd McConkey are doing in the NFL right now in their first season?
They were pretty good, weren't they?
Yeah, he's the #1 tight end in my fantasy league, and I drafted him.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so because I thought he was that good, and he is that good. And so you don't have those guys there for Beck right now, and I believe he's thrown 3 interceptions 3 times this year already. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So let's go on and make it 4 or 5 against the Rebels. Let's put the pressure on him. Let's turn some Taron Perkins loose. I know he didn't get the fumble, but what a hustle play by Perkins. I got to mention that. I've been saying it all year. All
this legend.
Plays. He just makes plays. So
yeah, he is already Tony Connor.
Yeah.
Already Tony Connor.
Yeah.
By the time he leaves, he has a chance to be Will Anderson by the time he is done.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a storm coming up in the Gulf that's supposed to hit Thursday or Friday. It's going to be a tropical storm type stuff. So this is what I'm worried about a little bit. We all know that those things bend up and then they bend to the east usually. And it's supposed to hit Louisiana and come up through. So there's a chance for rain in this ball game. That would be interesting. I'm thinking right now it's a low scoring level of game. Brad, what is your read on this football game right now?
I said on my podcast last week with David Johnson that if Ole Miss beats Arkansas in Fayetteville, they're not going to lose again. So I stand by that. And in fact, that I learned more in Fayetteville than I really thought I would. And I just really like the way this team is playing. And I just don't think it's particularly close. I think Ole Miss wins by a couple of scores, honestly. I think Georgia's walking into a buzzsaw. We talk about Ole Miss walking into a buzzsaw with South Carolina, with LSU, with Arkansas, particularly with LSU and South Carolina. I think Georgia's walking into something that they have no idea what they're walking into. And people talk about how Vaught Hemingway is not an intimidating environment. I've been very adamant on night games at Ole Miss, and the SEC should legitimately do something about that, and that's a hill I'm going to die on. It's incredibly unfair for some programs to have multiple night games, and it'd be a great environment. It'd be an advantage for the home team, but yet other teams don't have that. That's not right. If we're going to make things fair, everybody gets 4 downs to get a first down, then why are we allowing some home environments to be different than other programs? So that's another story for another day. But I like Ole Miss to win against Georgia. I think they cover easily. I think they and they don't have to cover. They're an underdog. So, I mean, I like Ole Miss straight up, regardless of what the line is. And I think they win by a couple of scores.
Yeah. And this is really cool for somebody that's my age and Brad's age and all that, because we can remember when Ole Miss versus Georgia was a yearly game. I do enjoy this game. I remember I was in the stadium when Cassius Beware just broke Eric Zier and Abdul Jackson picked up the fumble and went like 50 yards for a touchdown in that Ole Miss win. That was the last time Ole Miss had a defense honestly comparable to what this defense looks like. Last year, Ole Miss did not hit Carson Beck. So this week, on the podcast, I am going to spend just about every show telling you why Ole Miss can win this game. I'm going to tell you the reasons why they can win this game. And this is something that Oxford's going to be absolutely nuts. The Grove's going to be crazy. SEC Nation is going to be in town. And as Brad said, Georgia is walking into a buzzsaw this weekend. They just absolutely are. This is a game that we've talked about for 8 months. It's been 8 months talking about how big this game could be if Ole Miss could get Georgia with everything on the line. Ole Miss got that wish. Everything's on the line. It's going to be a big game. So it's going to be up to the players to execute, Ole Miss to play clean, the offense to show up, to be variable in what they do, and that defense to just be themselves. And if Ole Miss does that, they're going to win this game. Thank you, everybody. Zach Morath from the Rebel Walk, Josh Guest, Derek Vandy Griff from Ole Miss After Dark, and Brad Logan from Inside the Rebels, Logan Digital Media, the Red and Blue Crew podcast. He also does high school football in North Mississippi. The man is everywhere. Should be pretty fantastic. Anyway, thank you very much. We'll talk to you later. Hotty toddy, everyone.
Thanks, Steven.
Hi, Tommy.